Welcome to the Change Agent Podcast, where we are exploring the topics of leadership, project management, team building, technology, and more. The goal of this podcast is to bring you lessons learned from mistakes, experience, and real-world scenarios that may help you navigate those crazy waters of being a leader and a project manager. We strive to drive value for your organization and help you improve your team's performance. And so I hope you're looking forward to today's episode. And if so, let's get right to it. Welcome back, and today we're going to be looking through the project performance domains. These are found in the PMBOK Guide 7th edition, section 2. These 8 domains are the building blocks for delivering successful projects, and we're going to look briefly into each one of those and discuss some things about them in detail, but we're going to talk about their significance, understand how they interconnect, and how they drive project success. So we're going to have some fun along the way. Hopefully we'll get a couple of stories in to make this a bit more interesting, if it's not already interesting enough. So whether you're a seasoned project manager or you're just starting out, this episode is really going to provide you some good, valuable insights and show you how all of these seemingly non-connected items or domains are actually connected and why it's important to consider them when you're developing your strategy for managing your project. Now, the domains themselves, as they go through each one individually, it's important as we talk about these that you keep in mind and asking yourself the question, how does that connect to the previous one we talked about? And once we're done, think about how they're all connected. Well, I'm going to give you some insights on my own about that, but it's important that right off the bat we understand that they are interconnected and that they all provide advantages to the other domain. So what are the project performance domains? What are they as a whole? Now, according to the PMBOK Guide 7th edition, why not start right off with the textbook definition for this? A performance domain is a group of related activities that are critical for the effective delivery of project outcomes. That's what it says in the book. And so that's awesome. What does all that mean? Well, essentially what this is these domains are framework that you're going to go through and as you do your studies for the PMP certification or as you're improving your performance as a project manager that help identify, improve, and enhance these particular project frameworks, right? So each one of the domains are frameworks, and so there are 8 of them, and inside of these domains, they're all focused on some aspect, critical aspect of project performance. So you have stakeholders. There are 8 of these. Let's go through these. There are stakeholder performance domains, team performance domains, the development approach and lifecycle domains. This is what and how your project will operate. Your planning performance domain, project work performance domain, delivery performance domain, measurement performance domain, and last, number 8, uncertainty performance domain. Now, each one of these addresses a very specific aspect of project management, and that's why together they form an integrated system that supports your overall project success. Now, right off, let's get this out of the way. It's not saying that you'll actually have to deal with all 8 of these. You most likely will. And there's no order in which they may appear or disappear from your project as you're moving through. But it is critical to understand that without one of these, you run a very high risk of failure in your project. And by that, I mean, without understanding how these performance domains actually are working within your project, what their jobs are, recognizing them, and then understanding how they're going to be interconnected is a risk, right? You could run a risk of having a project failure. So it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, I guess they would say. So let's start off with the first performance domain, the stakeholder performance domain. Now, stakeholders, again, we've talked about these in previous podcasts, and you may already know this, and if so, just bear with me. Stakeholders are the individuals or organizations that are affected by or can affect your project. These are internal, and these could be external. It doesn't really matter. But engaging your stakeholders is extremely crucial for project success. I don't personally recognize any project that's ever been successful where the project manager or the leader wasn't engaging the people that they were responsible to. Okay, that could be the team, that could be your boss, that could be the people below you, That could be your supply chain personnel. These could be organizations that are outside of that may be impacted by your project. If you happen to be working on a bridge or some type of new building construction development area, right? And the people who live outside of that, who have homes, would be impacted by a new development going up right next door to them. All of these engagements are extremely important, and I can't imagine that you would be successful without engaging your stakeholders. So if you desire to argue that point, please send me a note. But yeah, you need to identify them. You need to understand their needs and their expectations and foster their engagement throughout the entire project from start to finish. You have to be talking to your stakeholders. So there are some effective stakeholder techniques and engagement techniques that you can use, but the characteristics that you really want to follow are identifying all of your stakeholders early in the project. You don't want to do this throughout the project late. Like, what I mean by that is you don't want to have to think to yourself, "Oh, I could do this later." No, you don't want to do it later, and you don't want to do kind of a half-tone job about doing it either. When you're initially doing it in the beginning with a project, you want to spend time thoughtfully looking through all of the potential stakeholders that you're going to have, internal and external, looking through lessons learned from past projects, talking to your organizations, looking through your organizational process assets, the OPAs, and seeing where stakeholders were identified that maybe you didn't capture. You're going to want to, once you find them, you're going to want to understand their interests, look at their expectations by talking to them and discussing with them and collaborating with them, and understanding and mapping out what their influences are. As we go deeper into these podcasts, we'll have an entire episode just on each one of these domains. And so you'll see that there are ways to do stakeholder engagement matrices and all these other different cool things that you can map out your stakeholders and see where they arise. So once you've understood their interests, their expectations, and their influence, the next thing you're going to want to do is develop strategies to engage them all appropriately. Not every single stakeholder needs to be engaged in the exact same manner. Some have very low influence, low interest, and low power, right? So they don't have not to say you don't talk to them and they're not important, but if something goes wrong, they're not the ones who are going to crush you, right? After you've developed your strategies, then you're going to want to communicate all the time, regularly, and consistently and transparently. So it's important that your stakeholder understands that if you start off, well, let's go to a story. How many of you have started or have known someone who has started a job in the first 6 months, they killed it? They just absolutely were motivated. They were having a good time. And then after about 6 months, they kind of trailed off and they went off into nowhere land and they just did the bare minimum. This is a pitfall that you could fall into when you're communicating with your stakeholders. You're excited about being the project manager. This might be your first time doing it, or you're just a super motivated PM. You get online, you find out you identify all the stakeholders, you understand their interests, you start developing a strategy to engage them, and then you engage them, and they go, "Man, I really like Eric. He's a good PM." And then 6 months later, they hardly ever hear anything from me, and they don't see me. That's a problem, right? So you want to make sure it's regular and make sure that you're transparent. Transparent being you tell them everything all the time when you talk to them. You don't hide anything from them. And then you want to manage their expectations and address all their concerns as fast as possible. If they do come to you actively and say, "Hey, Eric, I've got a problem with a particular individual, or this particular deliverable was out of date or wrong or incorrect," or whatever the case may be, or your monthly status report is out of whack, you want to immediately reframe that with, "Hey, I understand that this is the problem. Here's what we're going to do, and I'll keep you up to date as we move through the resolution." So by actively engaging your stakeholders, you're building that trust, you're gaining invaluable insight into what's going on around the organization and with your project, and you're also increasing the likelihood of project acceptance and success. So as I was managing a project not too long ago, I had developed over a course of about 4 years a very good relationship with my stakeholders in every single one of them. And we had a very good relationship. Not only did they trust that I would take care of their issues, but they felt confident enough to confide in me about things that I just didn't expect them to confide in me about. And they were always there for us when we needed them, and they always gave us honest feedback. And then, however, one day, lo and behold, as it is with every project, I had a challenge, an obstacle that came up. It was something wrong with a deliverable, and rather than them getting upset and like really going after each one of us to try to figure, to blame someone and to get us all in trouble, they simply asked, "What is it you think you can do to fix it, and how soon can we get that done?" And we'll take, otherwise, don't worry about it. Not that everybody's going to be like that, but that comes from building trust and building a relationship with the stakeholders so that when you do have an obstacle, it's more of a team effort between you and your customers and your stakeholders to fix something than it is I'm in trouble, we've done something wrong, and now you've got to scramble to try to fix it. The next performance domain we're going to talk about, number 2, is the team performance domain. Now, this focuses on creating and maintaining a high-performing team. It encompasses the processes and all the activities that you're going to do that are required to build and then foster a strong team, build collaborative environments, and promote a positive team culture. Now, there are some key aspects that you want to look at when you're doing this. This is making sure that everyone understands that they have a shared ownership of the things that are happening on that project, whether it's good or whether it's bad. You're going to want to clearly define your team roles and responsibilities, making sure that every person knows what their value is and how they bring that to the table. Every single person has something to contribute to that team. PMs, listen up. If you have people on your team that are not contributing and adding value, you unfortunately may not need them. And the last thing you want to do is have extra weight, on the team, dragging other people down. Because the thing is, if there's someone that's not performing and someone who's not bringing value, someone who's not contributing, this is the worst thing that you can have to deal with. If you don't do anything, your other teammates are going to see this and they're going to say, well, this individual, Eric, doesn't do anything. He just sits around all day. He doesn't deliver anything. He doesn't code anything. He doesn't deliver any value. And he's just sitting here. And now we have to all pick up the work. So you can see how this can affect your morale of your team. So make sure that you have everybody engaged and that you're engaging each one of them personally. Okay. Now, once you've got that established, you're going to start establishing your team norms and the values. This is all in parallel, really. You could do it all in the same whack. But what you really want to do is say, hey, these are the way I expect to run the team. This is how I'm going to operate. These are the things you can expect from me. These are the things I expect from you, and these are the values that I want you to uphold: the honesty, the truthfulness, the open communication, being fair with each other, no bullying, no name calling, all that crap. Once you've got all those things established, you're going to make sure that you encourage everyone to openly communicate with you by providing a safe space. You can tell people that hey, if you feel comfortable talking to me, I'll make sure that I listen and I hear you, and we're going to address any concerns you have together as a team. If you don't feel comfortable talking to me, here are the people that you can talk to. Maybe it's an ethics group within your company, or maybe your boss can do a skip level meeting where they skip you and go down to your subordinate. So you might want to think about those. The next one, not the last one, is providing opportunities and giving people the opportunity to have development and personal growth. So this is not just team development and team growth, but personal development and personal growth. And then you're going to recognize awards and achievements. This is really important, especially if you have a schedule that you're using for team recognition. For instance, I used to use a team quarter award meeting. So I would give, if the team earned it, I gave them an award every quarter, not every time that happened. So it wasn't super expected, because if awarding people become expected and it becomes consistent, then they're going to be, it won't mean anything, right? It's got to be earned. And so you're going to want to make sure you recognize and reward your team as they move through. The next domain is the development approach and lifecycle domain. This is the area where you're going to start addressing the methods and processes that you're going to use to deliver your project. And it really does involve selecting an appropriate development approach. This is really critical as you start looking at your project and trying to figure out exactly what your project's achieving and then how you're going to do that. So let's look at development approach and lifecycle domain. What this means is that as you're going through reading the initial proposal, or maybe the request for a proposal, on what the project is, the scope, and all of the tasks that may or may not be outlined in that document, you can start thinking to yourself about how you're going to approach this project. This means, are you going to use in the predictive lifestyle? Are you going to use a waterfall project methodology, which is the typical standard one we're all used to? Are you going to use an adaptive or agile methodology? Or are you going to combine agile project management processes with predictive and create a hybrid methodology? And this is what you're going to do as you go through reading those documents, thinking about how you can best deliver value consistently throughout the project. Some of the things you might want to consider when you're thinking about these are assessing the project's characteristics and constraints. What's the characteristic of the project? If you're building a bridge, you're probably going to use, which is a very linear project methodology, you're probably going to want to use a predictive methodology for that. If you're going to be doing software development where you have to deliver code quickly, consistently throughout the project, which is delivering value, and you want to make mistakes quickly so that you can fix them, that might be more of an agile methodology, agile framework. And if you do a little bit of both, maybe you're building a system and doing code like hardware systems, and you're doing software systems, then you might want to have more of an a hybrid methodology where you combine techniques and processes and stuff from predictive combined with agile methodologies and create this hybrid framework. It's really important because by doing this, it's going to help you define all of the phases that you're going to go through. It'll help you define all your milestones that you're going to have, put them on a small roadmap that's high level, and it's going to help you outline and understand what your deliverables are. And hopefully a lot of these things are going to be outlined in any requests for proposals that you get, so you understand exactly what the projects are. If you don't see the RFP, then you probably are going to get some other document from your functional leads in an organization that will help outline those things. And this will lastly help ensure that you're flexible and that you're able to adapt to changes as you need to. So it's important that you select the right development approach and the life cycle structure, because if you don't, you're going to have a real problem. It's super essential for aligning the project execution with objectives and stakeholder expectations. Now, the next domain is the planning performance domain. This is going to be a lot of emphasis put on this part because planning is a huge part of project success. This is where you're going to really lay down the foundation for project execution. I could go on and on about some anecdote that people have said about planning, especially from the military side, but understand that all successful projects require very stringent and as detailed planning as you can possibly have. So this domain focuses on developing and maintaining the realistic and comprehensive plan that you're going to use that helps guide all the activities and helps guide all the decisions that you're going to make. Some of the key aspects you're going to want to think about are, how am I going to define the project scope? What are the objectives? What are the deliverables? I'm going to develop some schedules. I'm going to start thinking about and outlining my budgets. And I'm going to talk about my resources. I'm going to figure out what's available to me. Understand that resources are all things that help you, that enable you to make execution a possibility. These are your people, your things that you have, your equipment, funding resources, as well as management resources. You're going to want to start identifying your risks, getting those down into a risk register, and then thinking about the mitigation strategies for that and making sure that you have an idea of who might own those risks before they become an issue. Just a note about risks are that if it's something that could happen but has not, it will be a risk. And if it happens, then it becomes an issue. Then you're going to want to establish what your quality standards are going to be and how you're going to measure that quality using performance metrics. There are plenty of ways outlined in the PMBOK guide and throughout PMI's website you can look at, and other management websites, even Agile. If you use Scrum, Scaled Agile Framework, or SAFe, they have lots of measurement metrics that you can pull and how to measure quality. But go and look at those. And then you're going to want to integrate all of these plans across your project domains. So effective planning really makes sure that your project team has a clear roadmap and it aligns all of your stakeholders' expectation to that roadmap, and it sets the stage for successful execution. The next domain is your project work performance domain. This is where we're going to encompass the actual execution of the project activities. It involves coordinating all the people, the resources, the management, making sure that you're managing your stakeholders as well, and ensuring that all of your delivery meets quality standards and that they're accepted. When you deliver something, you just don't drop it on someone's desk and walk off. That deliverable that you're delivering has been checked for quality, is checked for operability, it's checked for interoperability, and it's integrated into something. If that's say if you're doing software or hardware development, and then you're going to have the customer see that through a demo. They're going to accept it, and then it'll be formally accepted. Okay. So the project work performance domains really need to be nailed down, and you have to really get on top of these. Some of the things you want to think about are, how am I going to direct and manage my project work? What would be my methodologies for doing that? What tools would I use? I'm going to adhere to plans and processes. I'm going to monitor the progress and make necessary adjustments as I need to. I'm going to manage my communications and engage my stakeholders. And I'm going to resolve issues, and I'm going to facilitate decision making. So these are some of the things you want to keep in mind. It really translates these plans into tangible outcomes, and it really drives that project forward as you go through um, the life cycle. The next one is the delivery performance domain. This is where you ensure that project outputs meet the agreed upon requirements from your stakeholders, and it provides value to them. You want to deliver it and say, hey, these are the things you've asked for. This is what we've done. Let's show you how we've gotten this far. And this is really important because you have to verify that your deliverables are meeting quality standards. You have to obtain your stakeholder acceptance. This means that they say, yes, I accept. You facilitate the transition of that deliverable out of ops into your customers. So you want to make sure that that's done, rather from production into operations, or whether you want to deliver it directly to your customers. And then you want to ensure that the outcomes align with the business objectives. Whatever it is that you're delivering has some value going to and mapping to the strategic business objectives that you have. It doesn't do the business itself a whole lot of good outside of financial reward to deliver stuff that don't move the business forward, right? So that's what you really want to be thinking about. Successful delivery in a project is the culmination of all the efforts, resulting in satisfied stakeholders and making sure that you have realized benefits, right? The next one will be the measurement performance domain. Now, measurement performance domains, these involve tracking your project performance and making informed decisions based on data that you receive. This is looking at all of the things that are happening against the baseline. What did I plan to do? What have I done? So the planning part is where we go back to the planning performance domain. We develop all those planning milestones and everything that we want to achieve. And to do that, we want to have key performance indicators that have been identified. These are your KPIs. So in order to define what done or success looks like, you want to have some indicators. If I've achieved these three things, then that particular milestone is complete. So you want to define your key performance indicators, your KPIs first. Then you want to monitor the progress as you move through against those plans, those KPIs, and your baselines. Your baselines are the minimum. Like, this is what I think we need to be doing. And then you're going to go through the schedule as you're working through the project, and you're going to measure the performance against the KPIs. And if you're meeting them, great. If you're not, where's your gap and what's happening? And you want to try to get it back on track. This is analyzing the variances and trends as you go through there. So on my projects, I like to have weekly meetings to talk about financials, staffing, resource management, communications, risks, the plan itself, the deliverables that we have. So I have a slew of things that I talk about. And the way that I do this is I do it very quickly. My meeting for these particular things, when I do measurement performance, is simply the staff know what particular items I want to talk about. As I mentioned, financials, product delivery, deliverables, whatever the cases are. So my resources, my staffing, my hiring and firing rates, all that stuff. And so what we do is we sit down and I say, are there variances from what we talked about last week? And the team will address each one of those as necessary. What we don't do is we don't just sit up there and eat up an hour of our day just because we have it on the calendar. It makes no sense. So when the staff sits down, if the first thing on the agenda is staffing and then the next thing is financials, which who cares which order they go in? If there's nothing new on staffing, they'll skip it. We'll skip it and we'll say go right to financials. So maybe, Mr. Adams, there's nothing different than what we talked about last week, and we'll turn a 1 hour meeting into a done meeting. So awesome. That's measurement performance. So then after you analyze it, you're going to want to report the performance to your stakeholders. You're going to want to do something with the information that you've received, and you want to make informed decisions. Now, the last one is the uncertainty performance domain. Now, projects inherently have uncertainty. This is something we talked about before, and not knowing everything is perfectly normal. And don't feel like that you have to know everything, because it's almost impossible for you to do so. But what you want to do is you want to address and identify what your unknowns are. These are a list of assumptions throughout your project, and you want to manage those assumptions against your risks and uncertainties that you have otherwise found, and how they can impact your project and its outcome. And so here's some things you might want to think about when you're going through the uncertainty performance actions, right? You want to assess the likelihood and the impact of a risk. So as you did in the risk portion, you go through and say, hey, these are my risks. If they do occur, here are the things that could be impacted, and here's how my project will be impacted. You're going to want to then develop your risk strategy so that you understand quickly how you're going to mitigate and respond to those risks and who owns those risks. You can use various platforms for this. This could be something in the Atlassian suite. This is used in Jira and Confluence and all that good stuff to manage risks. Or you can just have a simple Excel spreadsheet that's tracking all your risks. Whatever you do, make sure that someone owns it and that there's a risk ID number that's associated with them so that nothing gets confused. Then you're going to want to monitor the risks throughout the project. And once you've monitored those risks, you're just tracking them every day, every other day. Maybe it's every quarter, maybe it's every week, maybe it's every month. I don't know what your schedule might be, but you're going to want to have that as part of your agenda as you're talking through your team, just looking through it. Okay. Then you're going to want to adapt to your plans and making sure that adapt your plans to address and making sure everything's in line and that you have all of your uncertainties tracked. Okay. If new ones come up, put them on the list. If you've got an uncertainty that became a certainty, or an unknown that became a known, take it off the list. So by proactively managing uncertainty, you can really enhance the project's resilience in case something does go wrong, which increases your likelihood of it being successful. Now, it's important to say, in summary here as we get ready to close this out, that understanding and effectively managing your 8 project performance domains is super critical for you delivering a successful project. We talked about many different ones. We talked about 8, in fact, and you need to be thinking about how they are all connected, because obviously managing your stakeholders and managing risks are 2 very connected items. If you have a risk that comes up, you tell someone about it. That's your stakeholder engagement, right? If something comes up and it's a risk, maybe you identified a risk in losing a team member, you're going to want to talk to your team about that. That's team development, the team performance domain. So you can see that these are all connected, and in many different ways. I think if you were to try to draw out how they were connected, it would be a spider web. And when you look at a spider web outside in your window or wherever it may be, you'll see that it just looks like a ball of mess, unless it's one of those cool orb spiders, then maybe not. But if it's just a regular messy spider, the web looks like it has no starting, no ending. And it's crazy to think that a spider created that from start to finish, right? Just as a point of reference, that came off the Yellowstone show. And so it's really, you got to remember that these domains are interconnected. Excellence in one area really supports performance in another one. And by focusing on the 8 items, the stakeholders, the teams, the planning, execution, delivery, measurement, and uncertainty, you are really creating that holistic, foolproof approach to project management that drives that value and helps you achieve that success. Now that's it for this episode. I certainly hope that you found it helpful. If you did, please subscribe to the podcast and make sure that you leave a review, share your show with your colleagues and your friends, and provide us some recommendations on how these podcasts can improve. Also, if you have a topic that you'd like to hear about, let me know. If you'd like more information on how to engage with me directly, you can head over to kalina-vision.com. That's spelled K-A-L-Y-N as in November, A-vision.com. You can also catch me on YouTube at Beyond the Glare, or find me on your favorite podcast platform to learn more and see how I can help you and your team get to the next level. Thanks for listening, and until next time.